This video is to introduce the diving deeper into your discipline assignment and specifically the how to use the Web of Science resource for this assignment. A little overview of where we're at right now. The first assignment is describing your discourse community, your discipline as a discourse community to those of us who aren't in it at all. And it's kind of a view that you might get of your discourse community if you were flying over it in an airplane or something. So it's a very high altitude sort of view. Now we're diving in a little bit closer. So now we're actually getting into a little bit more of the nitty gritty of what your discipline's discussions have been about by looking at the scholarship. And just to let you know, the next assignment is an even closer view in which you're going to take a single article and then expand on that in terms of the references and the citations and everything else. That's the WorkNet assignment. We'll get into that in a few weeks. Now we're going to use this resource called Web of Science, which is far from perfect way to do this, but it's a start and it gives you an idea of again, a sense of what the important discussions and disciplines are. So the first step is you have to figure out what the important journals are in your field. Now, you might know this already based on past classwork and research and things that you've done. If you can or want to, and I would encourage you to just ask a professor. I am sure that if you ask a professor in your discipline, what do you think are the three to five most important journals in our field, I am sure they're going to be able to tell you what they think those journals are. You could do a little research. If you Google most important journals in X, whatever the field is, you'll get some results. One way or the other, there's no perfect solution for this. This is all kind of there's no right answer about the top journals in any different field. That's always a matter of opinion and a matter of debate and discussion. So, don't get too hung up on those sort of details. But again, you want to sort of hone in on things, 3 or so journals that most people in the field would recognize as being important. Second step is use the Web of Science database. Now, I want to be very clear here. I am far from an expert on this. It's the first time I've used it myself for an assignment or really for anything. And I don't want to purport that it's the best source for this sort of thing because I have no idea what is the best source for this sort of activity. But it's the one that we have access to at EMU. And it's also pretty easy to use. So let me show you how this works. The first step is to go to the EMU Haley Library homepage, imagestudyedu/library. Click where it says Databases. And then we're going to Web of Science, which is right there. At this point, you might have to log in if you're off campus, but I'm on campus, and so I can get into it. First thing I'm going to do is in terms of select a database, I'm actually going to select all databases. To be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure this makes a lot of difference, but it figures that might be the way I'll go about doing it. The next thing I'm going to do is for cited reference search. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in the name of a journal right here. I'm going to type in, I've been playing with this already, but College Composition Communication, major journal in the field. And I'm going to select cited work. And then I'm also going to use this cited years option here. Because remember, you're supposed to be using articles that you found between 2010 and 2020. One thing I learned is that this is actually kind of picky. So you really do have to do that with that dash, that format right there. And then you click where it says search. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to toggle this arrow right here. And when I do that, it reloads. And now it starts with the most cited articles. Okay, and then I also have selected the expanded titles for the articles themselves. So in College Composition and Communication, again, journal in my field of composition and rhetoric, especially for people who are interested in things like the teaching of writing, these are the top sort of cited things. And so now I'm somewhat familiar with this, but you can sort of look at the titles for things and maybe look them up in a different database to figure out what they're about. So in other words, if I click on this link, for example, I might get sometimes I'll get an abstract. Looks like I get an abstract here, but I can't necessarily get a link to the article itself. I might have to use a different database for that. Of course, there's an option for find PDF and find text. But the point is that you might have to use a different database for that. But you can get a little bit more information on what these articles are about. But just judging by some of the titles and things that I already know about, I'm kind of interested in some of these issues having to do with multimodal work, which has to do with like multimedia, that sort of thing. And I'm interested in things like critical discourse analysis and things like this, stuff like this, and things like about MOOCs and stuff like that. So I've got this article here, Composition 2.0 towards a multilingual multimodal framework. That's been cited a lot. And that's one, and this potentially might be one that fits into that sort of thinking about some of this stuff too. Also, I did a book about MOOCs, and so I'm obviously very interested in that. But these are all articles in the sort of top 10 or so. And I'll remember this one. So I'd copy and paste that out. And then I'd try a different search. So I click search again. And now what I'm going to do, remember I copied and pasted that other article out someplace else, is I'm going to select College English. College English is another big journal in the field that covers some of these similar sort of topics. Again, go back over here. Try that again. Go back over here. I have even more articles there. Expanded titles. Again, if I was interested, this translingual approach, and this here also tied in with some articles in that other journal. So that's definitely one of the other topics, major topics of discussion between these journals. In fact, these three articles right here all kind of relate to that in different sorts of ways. But again, my own interest, and this is part of what I'm getting at for you, is you want to find articles that are in the top parts of the discussion in your discipline, but also things you're potentially interested in. So here's one: re-educating the senses, multimodal listening, bodily learning, and the composing of sonic experiences. There's a lot of people who've been very interested about the use of sound in writing, so that's the second article I could use. Multimodal writing as rhetorical attunement. Again, that's a third article too that talks about multimedia, sound, that sort of thing. Okay, you get the idea. Digital humanities and historiographic composition. That's another art area that may or may not be of relevance. So I might have to look at 3 or 4. I might have to look at like 6 or 7 different articles to come up with the 5 that I need to do for this. But I've got a couple here already. And I'm going to do one more search. And that's for a journal called Computers and Composition. I did this search earlier, so that's why it shows up there. There we go. Click that little tab there. And again, this is issue of design. This topic here: design of Web 2.0, multimedia storytelling. Camtasia. Camtasia is a multimedia tool. The changing space of research. Again, we're getting back to Web 2.0. Multidimensional perspective on writing, which may or may not fit. Okay. So after doing that search, I've got some ideas about places where I could begin. Okay, hopefully that makes some sense. I just wanted to mention one last thing here. You may have noticed this in terms of what I was picking. I was already, when I was looking at the Web of Science database for myself, I was already kind of had in mind that I was interested in multimedia, and that was a sort of angle that I would have, if I was doing this assignment as a student, that I would have probably honed in on, because that was one of the top discussions that happens in the discipline that I'm interested in. But I could have picked the one on translingual studies and second language studies and stuff like that. And so you get to choose what top discussion is most interesting to you. I would say if you can go into the top 20 or so cited articles in a particular journal, maybe a little bit more than that. Anything in that range, I think, counts as one of the top discussions, especially since over the course of 10 years, these journals probably publish a couple hundred articles. So that probably makes sense. If you have any questions about what to pick for a particular topic or whatever, let me know. and we can chat about it. Either I can take a look at it on Web of Science for you, or we can meet and talk about it, or do something electronically. But you do get some leeway in here. Hopefully this makes some sense. Let's see how this assignment turns out.